We're now on the top of Daf Pei Dalet Amud Beis. Toshma, the Gemara wants to prove that the Chachamim conceded to Rab Masya ben Cherich with regard to Tzaftida, the Tani Rabba Bar Shmuel Ubra Sheiricha, a pregnant woman who on Yom Kippurim smelled a tavchil, Machilin such a touch of nafsha. We're allowed to feed her on Yom Kippurim till she comes to herself. Michin Chacho Kelev Shote, Machilin so Michotze Kavei Chalo, Achochish Pepiv, Matil lo Sam B'Shabbos Divrei Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi Shomer Mishum Rab Masya ben Charash. V'Chacham Omer Bezu v'lo b'Acheres. In this one, we agree to Rab Masya, but not in the other one. So the Gemara says, Bezu Ahe. On what case is the Chacham focus when they say, yeah, we agree to Rab Masya? Ilema Ubra Pshita. We wouldn't need the Chachamim to even go bother telling us that a pregnant woman, we have to feed her if she has that smell and she has to eat. Her life is certainly in danger. With Ubra Miika Duman to Yoma Lod, we don't find anyone who disagrees with the Mishnah. We have a Stam Mishnah that says that we feed the Ubra on Shabbos. Elalav, shouldn't we say that it's Asam? That when it says Bizu, I agree with you. The Chacham say we agree with you. In this case, they're referring to the case of Sam, and that's the case of Tzaftida, where the Chacham accept Rab Masya ben Charash, and therefore Shmamina, Rab Yochanan is relying on a unanimous decision that creating this concoction that he learned from the Matronisa for the sake of this gum disease is certainly a reliable remedy, and we will violate the Shabbos because of the danger involved in this disease. And Rav Ashi Omer Masnisa Nami Daika. If you read the Mishnah carefully, you'll see it in the Mishnah. So let's just quickly, keeping the finger on the place, let's just go back to the Mishnah. And this is a beautiful diuk of Rav Ashi. Second. I'm sorry. Oh, here it is. Pei Gimel Amid Aleph. And if you look at the Mishnah, it says that Misha Neshacho Kelev Shote Ein Machino So Michotze Kovit Shalov Ramasya Ben Charash Matir. So the Mishnah records a machlokes about feeding the victim of the rabid dog's bite with the liver of the dog, and then after recording that machlokas, it says v'od, and furthermore, Amar Masya ben Charash, Achochish begrono, and then you have the Tzaftida gum disease, and you violate the Shabbos by creating this sound, this concoction. So Rav Ashi says, wait a minute, Masnisa Nami Daiko, very careful about reading the Mishnah. V'od, Amar Masya ben Charash. On the V'od, the Mishnah doesn't record any machlokas. Hachoshish b'piv matil lo sama mavis lo pligi rabbanan aleh. If Isa to pligi rabbanan aleh, if the rabbanan would disagree, even in the case of the sam for the gum disease, then larvinu v'listinu v'lifnu rabbanan b'seifa. The Mishnah should have said that Rav Masya has a remedy of a liver of a dog, and he has a remedy of this concoction, and then quote the Chachamim as saying that we rejected Shema Minah. Very clearly, from a diuk and Mishnah, Rav Ashi says you can conclude that the Chachamim certainly agreed with Rabbi Masya on the viability of this therapy for a gum disease. Now, the Mishnah says that when we violate the Shabbos, we do so with Nesha Safek Nefashas, and Safek Nefashas Doches HaShabbos. So we will violate the Shabbos even in the case of Safek. So the Gemara asks, once the Mishnah says that you're allowed to make this concoction on Shabbos because of Safek Nefashos, so we understand that Safek Nefashos overrides the Shabbos. Lama Lisu L'meimar, why did the Mishnah feel compelled to add a phrase, Bechol Safek Nefashos Doches HaShabbos? You've already told me that Safek Nefashos is Doches HaShabbos. Rabbi Yehuda Marav, lo safek b'Shabbos zu bilvad amru el afilu safek b'Shabbos acheres. Let's say a case where maybe we can push off the violation of the Shabbos of this Shabbos, and Motzi Shabbos will apply the therapeutic method that we needed to do. He'll survive until Motzi Shabbos, and then instead of violating two Shabbosos, meaning this one and the next, we'll only violate the next Shabbos. And the Mishnah wants to tell me, no, we will violate this Shabbos. We're not going to wait till Motzi Shabbos and take chances. Maybe he'll get better by Motzi Shabbos. Hey, Chidami, what's the case? Kigon dam du letamya Yomi. The Rofim have evaluated that he has to take this psalm, this concoction, this medicine, for 8 days. The Yoma Kama, the first of the 8 days is Shabbos. So from Shabbos to Shabbos is 8 days. He's going to have to violate the Shabbos 8 times. He needs new medicine for each day. Now, the time I would think liyakiv aliurta. Why don't we just wait till after Motzi Shabbos? Lo nechel, we won't be machal alei for him. Trei Shabbos. We'll only be machal the second Shabbos, not the first, because the first day includes the night after the day, and there's no immediacy here. He's not going to die until Motzi Shabbos. Why don't we administer that psalm, which requires a chol? Why don't we do it on Motzi Shabbos? What's the loss? Ashmalon, the Mishnah is telling me in the Sefer, by adding this phrase called Safek Nefashos Tochas Shabbos, that right now the man is in a state of sakana. We're not going to play games and start delaying, and what are the chances that we'll do it Motzi Shabbos and it'll survive till then? Tanya Nami Hachi, and we have this also in a Brisa. Now the Brisa is going to discuss a case where we have to heat up water for a chole mesukon, he's in danger, and the water is going to be heated up for one or two reasons. Either for him to drink the water or to bathe him in the water. That also is considered a very important therapy in certain cases of pikuach nefesh. And therefore, macham min mayim lechol b'Shabbos bein lashkoso, whether or not you need the hot water given to drink, ubein lehavroso, meaning to wash his body, v'lo b'Shabbos zu bilvad amru ela l'Shabbos acheres. Even for what's going to be a danger for sure next Shabbos, we can violate this Shabbos. Ain't omrim. We don't say namtin lo. We'll wait till after Shabbos. Shema Yavri, maybe he'll get better. He'll restore his health on a natural way. El mecham lo miyat. Right now, he is in a Safek Nefashos Pikuach Nefesh situation. Heat up the water now without any delay. Now the Brisa sort of summarizes this principle or formulates a principle that lo Safek Shabbos zu, no, not only for this Shabbos, but el afilu Safek b'Shabbos acheres. Right now, his status is he is a chole mesukon, he's in danger. And not only that, the Brisa says, who's gonna heat up the water? Let's get a guy to do it, right? Ain't osin dvar malol. Lo yedei nachriv, lo yedei kusiyim. Right, kusiyim is a suffix whether Jews or not Jews. We assume that they were geri arayas and their conversion was not a reliable, serious conversion. Don't give it over to a guy. Ela al yedei gdolei Yisrael. And some say that the word gdolei means past the age of bar mitzvah. You don't have to say the child. Others say gdolei Yisrael means literally. The leaders of the generation should take it upon themselves to violate the Shabbos. However, when we need a medical evaluation as to whether or not we should violate the Shabbos, is the Yachola Mesukah, we don't rely on a woman or on a guy. For example, let's say we have two Rofim that say his life is in danger. We have another 3 experts who say, no, he'll be fine. He can fast on Yom Kippur, no tragedy. Now a woman comes along, or a Kusi, a non-Jew, and gives her or his evaluation. That makes it 3 and 3, and in such a case, we'll violate Yom Kippur because Safek Nefashos. We learned to the Brisa Pikuach Nefesh b'Shabbos when there's a case of a dangerously ill person on Shabbos. Hazaris Harezem Meshuba. Zoris means don't delay. Go into active mode immediately. That's why I was so proud of our Hatzalah people. Don't go running around looking for the local rabbi, going to Bezdin. In the meantime, Chas Shomi could die. HaKetzad. And now the Bryce is going to give us a whole long list of cases, of scenarios. And then the Gemara is going to try to see what the Chiddush is in each scenario. Number one, a babe fell into the sea. And you have to fish out that baby very quickly. Pores mitsuda umaleu. He's got to immediately, without delay, throw the net in and bring the child to the shore. The quicker he is, the better. And we will praise him for that. Don't run around and look for Bezdin to allow you to do this. Even though it entails a violation of malacha, as the Gemara is going to clarify, afal gav b'kotsaidi kavre. Inevitably, when he puts the net into the sea, not only will he catch the baby, but he'll fish the fish as well, and that's the malach of tzeidah. Now here we have major machlokas rishonim as to whether or not you're allowed to have that in mind, meaning, as he's saving the baby, let's grab a couple of fish as well. Some say he's allowed to do that. Others say no. Look, I clearly shouldn't have in mind that he's going to. But everybody agrees that he doesn't violate Shabbos, and he's not liable for this because he's doing it to save the child, and that Maisa is a Maisa of Pikuach Nefesh that overrides the Shabbos. Next case, Ra Tinok Shenafel a bar. Now, in the case of a bar, a cistern, the babe is not going anywhere. He's stuck in the bottom of the bar. It's oker chuya umalehu. Chuya means that on the outer lip of the bar, there's a kind of a little hill that they fall surrounding soil, and he's going to push the soil down, making even a little step, in order to get down to the bar to bring up the child from the bottom of the bar. And even though the Mesakein Darga, that this bar, which is a cistern of water, and it's used to draw water, now he created a Darga. He improved by making this step and making the water more accessible. Doesn't matter. It's still mutter. Next, case number 3. Rush and in Allah Delis with Tinok, a child was in a house, a room, and the door was locked as the child is locked in a room. Shovra, he's allowed to break down the door, umotzio, and he takes the child out. Vazores harezim meshuba, ve'ein tzarich lito rishus mi bezdin. Why is the child's life in danger? The child's not going to starve to death now in Motzi Shabbos. And it's unbelievable. And Farshim say because the psychological state of being of this child, of this infant, knowing that he's locked in, he's frantic. He could die from that. And even though he has in mind, once I'm breaking down the door, I'll do it in a way that I'll cut it into sort of slices, and there'll be nisarim. Nisarim means, strips of wood, which he can use as firewood. So he gains something. And he's involved in a malacha of makah b'patich, and he has it in mind. Nevertheless, he's allowed to do it. Case number 4. There's a fire that broke out. It's a dangerous fire. And you're allowed to do what? Extinguish the fire, or alternatively, you're allowed to set up clay matachos that are filled with water so that when the fire starts to expand, it'll break the kli and the water will put out the fire. Well, likely this is with a kli cheres that'll break with the heat of the fire. And even though when he puts out the fire, he is mashve the gecholim. He makes a flat surface out of these coals that are out of control. And after Shabbos, he'll fry his fish on these coals. Utrich, I need all four cases. If we only had the first case where the baby fell into the sea, until he goes to Bezdin to ask whether he can have a heter for this, the child is going to be swept out by the waves of the sea. Chas v'shalom. Bar, he's trapped inside the bar. He's not going anywhere. Dikar Yosef, that's where he's sitting. It's not the same kind of sakana. Ema lo. Maybe we shouldn't be mechal Shabbos. Tzricha. And the Bryce wants to tell me no. The child will be overwhelmed by fear and it might die from fear. Bar, mishum mivas. The child is in a state of biususa, which means extreme fear. Avol ninala deles. Okay, the child is locked in a room. So you know what we'll do? Efsha di Yosef Bahai Gisa. Maybe you could go around the door to another place. Umeshabesh le bamzuge. Bamzuge are egozim. In other words, start knocking. If you have walnuts, you start making noises, and the child will think, you know what? He's playing games with me here. So in the meantime, the child has what's called hesek hadas, and you have diverted his attention in such a way that he's not overwhelmed by fear. Srichi. And therefore, the Mishnah, the Bryce wants to tell me, even in this case, we're not going to start playing games over here and see if we can, amuse the child and distract the child. Right now, it's a sakana, break down the door. And Mechabim Afsik in the fourth case of the Bryce, why is that necessary? And the answer is, if, let's say, the fire broke out in one courtyard, and there are elderly people, children, infants in another nearby courtyard, we will extinguish the fire in the first courtyard. There's no one there in the first courtyard. It's completely vacant because the fire might spread to the second courtyard. Now, this statement of Shmuel is going to occupy our minds for quite a while. When it's pikuach nefesh, we don't apply the principle of rov. So the Gemara asks, Seichi Dami, what's the case? Maybe you have one chotzer, one courtyard. And who's there? Tisha Yisrael, Vekusi Echad Mibeinayu. The 9 out of 10 chances that if we cannot identify if there was an avalanche, never surfside, right? And there was a body that was trapped underneath, we don't know if it's a guy. We don't violate the Shabbos for a guy. Again, halacha l'maisa, different issues of Eva, but we're talking in theory, abstract law. Maybe it's a Jew. So what is Shmuel telling me? Ein holchin achar rov, Ruben Yisraelin. Certainly we're going to violate the Shabbos to save what is in all likelihood a Jew. But rather, Inami, you're going to have to tell me that it's Palgal Palga. There are 5 Jews and 5 Goyim. So now it's a Suffolk Ashakal. Again, what is Shmuel telling me? Suffolk the Fash Lahakel. In every case of Suffolk, maybe the one who's trapped under the debris is a Jew. Ella, but rather to Ika Tisha Kusiyim Yisrael Echad. You have 10 people in that chotzer where there was a landslide, and 9 out of 10 are Goyim. Morris says no. What do you mean? And Shmuel's telling me in Holchim Achar Rov, which means that in this case the Rov's telling me it's a guy. We don't rely on the Rov. We will violate the Shabbos and assume it's the 1 out of 10 Jew. Hanami Pshita, believe it or not, we don't need Shmuel for that. Why? Tahavile Kavua, when a landslide falls on people and those people are stationary, then we apply the principle of Kol Kavua Kemechtzal Mechzintom. When the suffix is not Nolad Beprisha, but rather Makom Kvius, it's a 50-50 suffix. And once again, we'll apply the principle of suffix and Vachlaka. L'tzricha, Iparuj, Lechatzer Acheres. That what happens is that those who live and occupied that first chotzer, they left that chotzer and they went into a second chotzer. And in such a case, we don't have halach of kavua. So says Shmuel, if there's no halach of kol kavua k'mechtzal mechtzadami, then you might think that we should rely on rov. So Shmuel comes to say no. In Pikuach Nefesh, we don't paskin based on Rov. Ma'adu Tema called the Parish Meruba Parish. And therefore, since there are 9 goyim out of 10, we're going to assume that the Mapolis fell on a guy and we won't violate the Shabbos. Kamash Malan, Shmuel tells me, ain't holchim, lo holchim, Pikuach Nefesh Rov. And despite the Rov, which tells me, in this case of Parish, where he went from one chutz to another, that he is a guy, we're not going to rely on Rov. We're going to assume that he might be a Jew. Aini, is this so? Veha Omar Rav Asi Omar Rabbi Yochanan. We have a statement of Asi in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Tisha Kusi of Yisrael Echad. If you have 9 out of 10 are goyim and the mapolis falls on them, B'yosa Chatzer Mefakter. If it fell, this landslide in that Chatzer, then we're going to consider that 1 out of 10 possibility that it's a Jew, and we will violate the Shabbos. But the Chatzer Acheres, if the people were in a different Chatzer, and the second Chatzer is where the landslide fell, Ein Mefak, and we will not violate the Shabbos, because since it's Rov Kusim, then we apply the principle of Kol the Parish Meruba Parish, and the Rov tells me that this unidentified victim is a guy. And that's against Shmuel, because Shmuel says, even if there's a 1 out of 10 possibility that it's a Jew, we will violate the Shabbos. So kasha ha de parish kulu ha de parish miktsaihu. If everyone in the first Chatzer left the first Chatzer and entered into the second Chatzer where the mapolis came down, then Shmuel says, ein holchen achar harov. And even though the rov here called the parish tells me it's a guy, we will violate the Shabbos. But the statement of Rabbi Yochanan is a case of parish miktasayu. Let's say one person left the first chutz and went into the second chutz. So the Rov tells me that the person who left the first and finds himself in the second is a guy. We don't have any definite knowledge, what's called a chazaka, that there's a Jew here in the second chutz, and therefore we don't violate the Shabbos. Does Shmuel really hold this position of ein holchin b'pikuach nefesh acharov asnan? We have a mission in the second parak of Machshirin, in a case of a city that has a mixed population, Jewish and non-Jewish. What's about Tino Mushlach? You find a bamboo cradle is Imrov Kusim. If most of the people in the city are Goyim, then we assume Kusi, the baby, is non-Jewish. Imrov Yisrael, but if most of the population is Jewish, then Yisrael. Mechtal Yisrael. Even if it's 50-50, we assume that the baby is Jewish. Yoma Rav says, with regard to this Mishnah Machshirin, Lo Shanu, this only applies. When do we say that Rov Yisrael, we consider the child as a Jew based on Rov Elach Yosa, which means that Bezdin has to make sure that he has a parnosa, that the child doesn't starve of hunger. Avoli Yachso, but let's say a Kohen wants to marry, let's say it's a girl. Lo, we're not going to consider him as a Jew. And for Yuchsin, we're going to do a Maila B'Yuchsin. And despite the fact that Rov Yisrael make up the population of the city, we're going to discourage the Kohen from marrying this girl. Maybe she's not Jewish. And just on the top of Pei Hey, preparing for tomorrow, but Shmuel Amar, Fakech Olav Esagal, that when it says that if there's Rov Yisrael in the city, we consider him as a Yisrael, that's in order to violate the Shabbos. We have to be afraid that he's a Shabbos. But let's apparently derive from this by implication that if it would have been Mechzal Mechza, if the city was 50% this, 50% that, then we would not apply the principle of override Shabbos. So we see that Shmuel holds that Holchem b'pikuach nefesh achar rov will only violate the Shabbos if we have a rov, but Mechzal Mechza not. And here you're telling me that Shmuel says, back on Pei Dalet, Ein holchem b'pikuach nefesh acharov. And the Gemara answers, Ki itmar de Shmuel ha-reisha itmar. The words of Shmuel are going back to the reisha of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says in Rov Kutzi and Kutzi. And if most of the people in that group are non-Jews, we consider them as a non-Jew. Omar Shmuel, in your pikuach nefesh ain't okay. But as far as pikuach nefesh, we will be mefakeach and violate the Shabbos. And ein holchem b'pikuach nefesh harov, despite the fact that there's a 90% statistical probability that it is a guy. Okay, then this is where we're going to stop here on the top of Pei Hey, Omid Aleph, and I'll wish you a great day. Thank you so much.
Shavua Tov, Shkoch.
Good talk to you.